Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ted Rollins. Glad to have you along with us. Let's go back to court. The next witness for Amber Heard's team, as she wraps up her case in chief today, is Dr. David Spiegel. He is a physician, a psychiatrist, and they want to qualify him as an expert. Right now, Johnny Depp's team is asking him a few questions before the judge rules on whether he'll be qualified as an expert. Let's go in live.
As a subset of that practice, some people have been involved with intimate partner violence.
So as a subset of my overall practice, 50% have suffered from trauma. About half of that number have suffered from, about 20, so it's about 20% that suffer from IP, intimate partner violence.
All right. You've never conducted any empirical research on individuals who experienced intimate partner violence, have you, sir?
If your definition is trials, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Like pharmaceutical trials, or what are you saying? Is that what you're saying? Because I've done review articles on patients who suffered from trauma. So the answer is, I haven't done any studies like where you give them medication for treatment or try one treatment versus another. I've reviewed the body of literature on intimate partner violence to get 2 review articles, yes.
So you've read about it, is what you just testified to.
I would have to disagree with you on that, sir. Reading about it and writing a review article are completely 2 different things, sir.
All right. You haven't authored any articles specifically on IPV, have you, sir?
As a subset of trauma, the answer is yes. In terms of in the name of the title of the article, the answer is no.
You've never written any books specifically on IPV?
I've never written any books on IPV, although temporomandibular disease, okay, in terms of psychiatric issues, does have a higher frequency in those patients who have suffered from trauma, including intimate partner violence.
You've never...
And I am part of that book.
Okay. Temporomandibular disease deals with problems with the jaw.
Is that a question, sir?
What is temporomandibular?
Temporomandibular disease is a problem with oral issues, yeah, but there are many patients who complain of oral issues where the oral surgeon cannot find a reason for it, and the reason why they can't is because people who have suffered from trauma and intimate partner violence are prone to increased sensitivity of somatic sensations, which can manifest in temporomandibular disease. Thank you, I appreciate that. Nice plug for my book, too, thank you.
Didn't hear it, but there we go. So you haven't written any chapters of any books specifically about IPV?
Again, I think I've gone over that. I've written 2 articles on that, and I've written parts of chapters. And dissociative identity disorder, I should add, where I did write a chapter on, is completely based on trauma and intimate partner violence.
Right. I'm not asking you about trauma because you want to talk about trauma. I'm asking you about IPV specifically.
I will reiterate again, you cannot separate intimate partner violence and say that is a separate rubric aside from trauma. Trauma is overall, intimate partner violence is part of trauma, and the answer to the question is any individual who suffers from a dissociative disorder, which I am the author of a chapter of, suffers from trauma, whether it be at the hands of childhood or it be at the hands of an intimate partner.
Right, but you've already testified that half your practice is trauma and a subset of that practice is IPV, correct?
Which is, actually, I treat the national average of patients. About 20% of patients suffer from it, and that's about my practice number.
Except you're discounting the fact that half your practice is not trauma at all. So 10% of your practice is IPV.
I don't know if the numbers add up exactly like that.
I'm just using yours.
I don't know if I'm doing, I don't know if those numbers add up like that, because I'm not sure if that's the case. If you take 25%, then maybe 12.5% of my practice, that's being rather specific. So again, a significant number of my patients have suffered from intimate partner violence. I see it on a daily basis, and I'm not sure exactly why I'm getting asked the same question again. Okay. Thank you, sir.
You listed 60 references to articles. I guess you said 80 now, and publications. And
I said around, sorry, I said around 80. I said around 80.
60, 80, whatever it is, right?
No, 60 and 80 is not, if you go to the PubMed, actually, why don't you can go to PubMed right now and Google, not Google, put PubMed Spiegel DR, and you'll find that number is 72 with 2 waiting to be impressed. 1 submitted, so that'd be 75. So it's at around 80. So again, what's on my CV is not necessarily the most updated version, because I still publish since the CV's been given to you, sir.
Right. And not one of the 72, 80 articles has IPV in the title, right?
Correct. Not one of them has IPV. It does have trauma, but not IPV.
Right. And you've never presented on the topic of IPV specifically?
As a function of trauma and as a function of somatic illness, again, I would say to you that it's part and parcel of these illnesses. So the answer is yes, I have. Okay.
Right.
The answer is yes, I have.
And IPV doesn't appear in your CV at all?
If you say it's not in my CV, I will believe you.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that are not in my CV that I do. So.
And you're not associated with any professional literature on IPV?
I'm sorry, repeat the question, sir?
Is there any professional literature that you've contributed to relative to IPV specifically as opposed to trauma generally?
The answer to the question again, sir, is that you cannot separate this artificial separation you are trying to do between trauma and intimate partner violence. It is part and parcel of trauma. We don't thread it like that.
Your Honor, plaintiff would accept this witness as an expert on general psychiatry, but and with respect to the drug usage issues that Ms. Bredehoff referenced, but not with respect to IPV.
All right, over objection, he's entered as an expert as stated on the record. All right, you may continue. Thank you.
Very much, Your Honor. Dr. Spiegel, at our request, what have you reviewed in this case? And just go ahead and give me more
So
it's
a lengthy review, but court filings, psychological testing that was done on Ms. Heard by both Dr. Hughes and Dr. Curry, other physicians' medical records, other physician note, Dr. Kipper, counselors and therapists that both parties and psychiatrists that they went to, text messages, depositions, snippets of the UK trial, and I'm sure pictures of physical injuries, so I've seen a lot.
What, if anything, have you seen in terms of emails, audios, videos?
Yes, so I've seen videos of Mr. Depp. I think the video was shown already of Mr. Depp destroying, slamming cupboards and breaking glass and yelling at Ms. Heard while having a wine glass in his, with wine in his hands. I've seen videos of destruction of property in the house.
Okay. And what, if any, review have you conducted of the deposition and testimony of Mr. Depp's hired witness, Dr. Curry?
Objection.
Sure.
All right, sidebar, let's get a break in here. More testimony from Dr. Spiegel when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. Sidebar just broke up. Let's go back in live on the stand is Dr. David Spiegel.
Do you remember my question? Did you review the deposition and testimony of Dr. Curry?
Dr.
Curry.
Yes, I've reviewed Dr. Yes, I'm sorry.
And,
yes, so I've reviewed testimony of Dr. Curry. I've reviewed Dr. Curry's reports. I've reviewed Dr. Curry's testimony.
Okay, and what if, did you review the deposition and trial testimony of Dr. Hughes?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of the disclosure.
I'll allow that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Did you interview Mr. Depp?
No, I did not.
Did you
But
request to interview?
I requested to interview Mr. Depp twice, and both times Mr. Depp and his lawyers refused.
Dr. Spiegel, I'm going to ask you some questions in this case respecting your opinions and the opinions you have formed and the bases for them. And I'm going to ask you to provide me with, in a reasonable degree of medical probability or certainty. Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay. On what were you requested to analyze and opine in this case?
So it's fourfold. One, I was asked to opine about the risk factors that are associated with intimate partner violence and behaviors that are shown, risk factors that are shown in intimate partner violence to be consistent with behaviors that Mr. Depp has demonstrated. Two, I've been asked to opine about the acute effects on alcohol and substance use, and I mentioned that including mood, behavior, cognition, functional impairment. Three, talking about the psychological profile, if you would, of, is there a question? I'm sorry. Oh,
No.
Okay. Of psychological and medical sequelae of patients who have suffered intimate partner violence and perpetrated intimate partner violence, and whether or not Mr. Depp's behavior is consistent with that. And lastly, about alcohol and other substance use disorders, their diagnostic criteria, their medical and psychological effects, psychiatric effects, their cognitive effects, and their functional effects. And I think I would like to just go with the jury one other thing. When we talk about, when psychiatry talks about substance use disorders, it's imperative to understand we're not talking about someone who rarely uses and happens to have a bad night. We're not talking about someone who uses on a weekly basis and has a bad night. We're talking about repetitive patterns of behavior that meet a list of 11 criteria that can be deemed mild, moderate, or severe. Because I think people get confused when they hear the word substance abuse, that they think of, oh, I may abuse this because I use it twice. There is a whole criteria of behavior and sequelae and consequences that go with a substance use disorder. I'm not just talking about someone who will occasionally smoke a joint or smokes a joint or snorts occasionally coke, okay, or has alcohol on weekends. So I really need to reiterate that, because I think when you look at psychiatric behavior, we tend to look, people look online and say, my gosh, I have all 7 of these, right? And they're reading it not quite the way the psychiatric literature is supposed to go. So please, when I'm talking about this, I need you to understand, one, that's what's going on. As I told you about intimate partner violence, it's horrible that anyone would strike anyone, okay? But again, we're talking about repetitive behaviors for means of control. Right. So that's real important to understand when you're moving forward. And I may say occasionally substance abuse, but what I'm referring to is substance use.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
I don't.
Sustained. Next question.
Okay. Dr. Spiegel, could you please just summarize for the jury the conclusions you came to with your opinions, and then we'll take you through the specifics.
So in my opinion, based on my a review of the evidence, based on my clinical experience, based on my publishing experience, based on my teaching experience, that Mr. Depp has behaviors that are consistent with both someone who has a substance use disorder as well as consistent behaviors for someone who is a perpetrator of intimate partner violence.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the impact of drug and alcohol abuse over time. First of all, based upon your review of the record evidence, what type of drugs has Mr. Depp used?
So Mr. Depp, and I'm talking about use, we're talking about a substance use disorder here. We're not just talking about use, okay? So we are talking about alcohol, we are talking about amphetamines, we are talking about marijuana, we are talking about cocaine, we are talking about LSD, we are talking about ecstasy, we are talking about opiates, we are talking about prescription benzodiazepines, and we'll get into a separate thing about the abusability of Seroquel and or gabapentin or Neurotin. And we are talking about much of the time concurrent use, meaning simultaneously.
In your practice, do some patients suggest to you that drugs and alcohol actually help them?
So I think patients who lack insight or are in the very early stages of recognizing they have a quote unquote problem will sometimes actually say that they have this medication actually calms me down. This medication makes me feel better. And in actuality, they may not acutely feel anything, but chronic and continual use will take its toll on the brain. So the answer is yes, but again, people who have substance use disorders have lack of insight and a lack of judgment about what's going on. They're very poor moderators of their own behavior.
Has Mr. Depp suggested, based on your review of the record evidence, that alcohol and drugs actually help him?
Yes, in review of the evidence, he has suggested that alcohol, Xanax, I'm in the list of medications, do help. Although I will also tell you on review of the evidence that there were at least 2 times I can remember that Mr. Depp was referring to at least short-lived periods of sobriety, and I cannot exactly tell you what that included, that both times he said that he functioned better and that he recognized that alcohol and drugs was at the root of his problems.
Okay. Now, there's been testimony that Mr. Depp is quite charming, both off and on the drugs and the alcohol. What is your answer to that?
So, again, let me put one thing clear here. I am not here to impeach Mr. Depp's acting skills or his persona. He has way greater skills than I do in that. What I'm here to say is talk about how drugs and alcohol affect what we all have in common. We're all human beings. We can all only get so much, take so much when something is going to happen. And that's what I see every day in the emergency room, on the consult service, on inpatient psychiatry. Bad things happen, not because of anything special, except we're all human beings and our brains, substance abuse, are not titrated. They're not regulated by the FDA. We don't know what we're getting. We don't know how much we're getting. There is no control over what makes it to our brain. So it is not the actor. It is not the persona, okay? It is a person just like the rest of us who are human beings who will have these effects, and that's what we all share in common. Everyone in this courtroom shares that in common.
When Mr. Depp was in his relationship with Amber Heard, was he a polysubstance abuser?
Was he in what substance abuse?
Polysubstance
Yes.
abuser?
So
Can you explain to the
leaving
jury
your-
what that is?
Overruled.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so polysubstance abuse is the use of 3 or more substances. And I answer, like I said, concurrently, he was. Even while I was getting ready for rehab on the island, he was. So, yes, he did engage in that.
Did Mr. Depp's drug and alcohol abuse affect him cognitively?
Yes. So, if nothing else to look at, Dr. Blaustein, a psychiatrist that evaluated Mr. Depp, did a mini mental state exam on him. And as part of that mini mental state examination, you're asked to remember 3 words and then come back 5 minutes later and repeat those 3 words. And in the meanwhile, you're getting other types of testing for attention and concentration and visual, spatial, and language. So other things that are being tested too. Mr. Depp was unable to recall any of them. And that is very unusual for a 50-ish year old male. I don't remember how old he was when he took that. Generally speaking, that age group should be remembering 2 or all 3 of those words. One, I do know that his lines were also fed to him by earpiece. Again, affecting memory. I did see video deposition about having to have questions, I don't want to say repeat as much as completely forgotten. So the answer is yes. And you know, any one of us who use alcohol and cocaine to that level of degree, and I'm talking about a severe level of substance use disorder, are going to have effects. It is inescapable because we all have brains that are malaffected by extensive substance use, and potentially sometimes less, but certainly what we're talking about here is extensive.
What, if anything did you observe from the record evidence about Mr. Depp having difficulty focusing, his attention span, processing, whether he could function as an actor?
So,
Objection compound.
Compound is only if it's
Overruled.
Thank you.
so again, in terms of the acting part, we do know that he needed his lines fed to him for movies. Part of that could have been also due to, and I don't know which movie, and please forgive me about that he actually confessed he did a movie entirely wasted. So I imagine it would be harder to do that. Additionally, like I said, when I looked at deposition, you can tell that the processing speed was down. His thinking rate was down. If your thinking rate is down, and I'm not talking about, again, I'm getting older. I'm probably not as sharp as I was at 25, okay? But I'm talking about it so slow that when we're trying to move on to other questions, we're still trying to answer the original data that's presented to us. So attention span is very much impaired. And if your attention span is impaired, your memory is going to be impaired. It is inescapable that that's going to happen. So all that comes into play there. And that's what I witnessed in the video deposition. Fortunately for Mr. Depp, I do see that during this trial, his cognition has improved somewhat, which will happen if you are sober. So I commend him on that. But again, I'm specifically referencing the time with Ms. Heard's and Mr. Depp's relationship. So we're talking about that.
What, if any, observations from the record evidence did you have about Mr. Depp having alcoholic blackouts or foggy mind?
Again, there were reported times where he would be essentially, quote unquote, passed out drunk. You saw pictures of him passed out drunk and not being able to remember what he did, which is, again, if you look at the record evidence, you will see that, and this is linking intimate partner violence and substance uses together. I know we're going to get to that, which is basically if you have blackouts and you're using alcohol or using cocaine, it's going to be near impossible to remember what happened the night before. I don't think I'm the first person that's ever told you that alcohol can cause blackouts. And basically, alcohol decreases a brain chemical, glutamate, which is involved in memory formation. If it blocks that to an extensive degree, the individual cannot remember what happened because they didn't have enough time for their brain to process the memory. You need this brain chemical. So does alcoholic blackouts happen every time? No, of course not. But are they complication of a use disorder? Absolutely yes. And there was record evidence of that.
Dr. Spiegel, you said at one point alcohol and cocaine. Is it possible to have blackouts with alcohol and different types of substances?
Yes. So my clinical experience, and I'll date it back within the last month, we had a patient who was using both, especially cocaine, and she had these kind of stroke-like lesions around the brain center known as the hippocampus, which is involved in memory formation. So
Objection relevance.
Just giving an example.
Overruled.
Combining the two substances together increases the likelihood, even if you don't get what is a major stroke. And again, we think of a major stroke as someone who has speech difficulties and movement difficulties. There's a lot of different types of stroke that can just affect cognition. They don't necessarily have to have severe movement deficits or severe language deficits. They can solely affect you in terms of your cognitive symptoms, and actually known as a vascular neurocognitive disorder. So you need to understand, and that's part of the psychiatric diagnosis. You need to understand that you can have these insults, these lesions, these strokes, without demonstrating physical features. And at a minimal, we know that he was using both substances concurrently, and at minimum, we know he has cognitive issues that we talked about, or at least had some of them.
Thank you, Dr. Spiegel. What, if any, correlation is there between domestic abuse, heavy alcohol abuse, and cognitive disorders?
So the risk factors, if you would, for intimate partner violence, okay, and they're probably many of them. I don't have time to go over all of them, but the ones in particular, characters in particular, are one, having someone in the relationship who is jealous or suspicious. Two, having someone who has a higher than average acceptance of violence ideations. Three, someone who has rapid and extreme mood shifts. Four, someone who has limited self-control. One of the roles of cognition, one of the roles of our brain, is to prevent inappropriate behaviors and acting out on thoughts. We all get angry at people. That's human. We all get angry at people. We all think things about people. The difference is when our brains are intact and working well, most of us don't act them out, okay? Most of us do not act them out. So that's because your frontal lobe and other parts of the brain are involved in making sure these negative thoughts don't get acted on, okay? So when you have the effects of alcohol acutely, it causes disinhibition, which means you are, by definition, losing control and having rapid mood swings. Two, you are affecting parts of the brain that are involved in what we call social processing cues. So you no longer can interpret what's in front of you that is, I would say, right or wrong, or what I should act on and what I shouldn't act on. So we act on them.
Dr. David Spiegel, on the stand, we need to slip in a commercial break. We'll have more of his testimony when we return. Stay with us.
Call now.
Welcome back. Let's get you back into the courtroom. Dr. David Spiegel is on the stand. He is an expert for Amber Heard's team, and he's talking about Johnny Depp's drug and alcohol use and the effects that would have on somebody's brain, etc. Here we go.
Even though sober, and I've seen it with Mr. Depp's record evidence, I've seen it clinically, sober, we can contain that. We can contain that. But when you have these mixtures together, knowing, by the way, that about 40 up to 60% of intimate partner violence is done under the influence of alcohol and or substance use disorders, okay? Knowing that treating it gets it better, improves, I'm not saying it removes it, but improves it. Hearing from Mr. Depp's own text to Dr. Kipper that he was better with that things are going better, will show you that given those confluence of factors, given them all lining up, the risk factors, combined with something that when any of us use to a certain amount, if we're novice at it, it'll be a lot less. If we're more experienced and have more tolerance and dependence, it's gonna take a lot more, but inevitably will make us disinhibited and will make us act out, and acting out can be done in a lot of different ways in intimate partner violence, okay? With also remembering, control is the end game of intimate partner violence. So that's how they basically interact in a nutshell.
Ms. Butterhoff, I assume you have...
I have quite a bit more.
Let's go ahead and take our morning recess. Ladies and gentlemen, just do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research. We'll be back with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In 15 minutes.
Sorry, I told you.
No, we're just taking a break.
All right. Taking a break there. The witness looking for some clarification. Does he give you some Christopher Lloyd vibes? Great Scott Marty. He's got that professor thing going. Let's bring in Eric Fadali. Your thoughts, Eric, on this witness? He hasn't really gotten to the core of his findings as an expert, but you know, he's talking a lot about that correlation that the Amber Heard team wants jurors to make, and that is drugs, alcohol equals potential abuse.
Right. He's certainly a professional expert, as you alluded to earlier, speaking very sort of in an animated fashion to the jury. I think that's very effective for an expert when they can really sort of explain themselves well and sort of perform, for lack of a better word, for the jury. You know, one thing that could hurt is the fact that he did not interview Depp. Certainly as a trial attorney, that's something I attack experts on all the time if they didn't actually evaluate the party that they're discussing. However, I thought it was interesting that he stated pretty unequivocally that he tried twice to evaluate Johnny Depp and they refused. I'm very interested to see if Amber Heard's team really exploits that, because juries really dislike when someone appears to be hiding something. So the fact that Depp's team refused to allow him to be evaluated by this expert, that could really be a really good way to sort of make it look like he's trying to avoid certain things, trying to hide things from the jury.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see where it goes the rest of the way here. Before Dr. Speigel, we had Dr. Richard Moore, who talked about, and he was a hand specialist, saying that the story of the vodka bottle just didn't match up with his professional opinion. How did you think he did?
I thought he was effective. Again, it's interesting to see this sort of an ancillary issue, right? This vodka bottle, what actually happened, and he wasn't there, right? I mean, no expert is really going to be able, I think, to sway the jury as to what actually happened, you know, with this bottle incident that we keep hearing so much about. So I thought he was about as effective as an expert can be for someone who is only sort of looking after the fact, looking at evidence, looking at pictures, you know, didn't recreate the scene. So I thought it was effective, but again, I don't really think it goes too much to any core issue here in this trial, and I don't think the jury's going to give that expert too much weight in deciding the ultimate issues in this case.
These two are opening acts for the big one. Johnny Depp coming back to the stand today, called by Amber Heard's team as the third witness of the day. So as soon as Dr. Spiegel is off the stand, we're expecting that Johnny Depp will be the next witness. What do you think is going on here? What do they want from Johnny Depp, Amber Heard's team?
I think this is going to be a continuation of what, in my opinion, the entire trial has been, which is really just a PR battle between the two sides. Who can make the other side look worse? Can Johnny Depp make Amber Heard look worse? Can Amber Heard make Johnny Depp look worse? That's what this entire trial has been, at least from my perspective. And so far, I would say both sides are doing a pretty good job. I think this is going to be probably the best opportunity for Heard's team to really just hammer home their point that Johnny Depp was this sort of abusive, addicted monster in their relationship. I mean, that's their theme. And I think this is their true chance to sort of perhaps get under his skin, really impeach him, really make him look bad. So I think Johnny Depp's team has done a pretty good job of doing that to Amber Heard. If you look at, you know, Twitter or really anything, you see that the tide has really shifted towards Johnny Depp and making him look sort of the hero in all of this, for better or worse. So I think this is Amber Heard's team time to really make Johnny Depp look like the person they're painting him to be, which is this abusive, drug-addicted, alcoholic monster. And we'll see if they're successful in doing so.
They had that opportunity with the cross after he was on, and most people, to your point, think that he did better than Amber Heard, if you will, on the stand in this he said, she said. Is it risky for them to bring him back if you believe that the jury thinks like the general public in terms of the performance of these two?
That's a great question, because certainly, you know, Johnny Depp got to where he is by being sort of this charismatic figure. He's obviously a fantastic actor. He has sort of this charismatic, positive persona that certainly has gotten him favor here. So it is risky. It is risky to put someone who is really good on the stand and can be very likable on the stand. My guess is perhaps they've learned from some of their mistakes during the cross-examination. Maybe they're going to have a new approach. Maybe they have some new ideas as to how they can sort of flip the script on how he was presented during cross-examination. Because otherwise, if it's just going to be more of the Johnny Depp show, that absolutely does not help Amber Heard's team. So my guess is that they have a different strategy here, and they're going to try to make him look really bad. But there absolutely is risk with how sort of charismatic and a figure he has presented himself to be so far.
Yeah, and one of the things that we think that will be explored on this by bringing him back is the idea that he was running the show with his attorney Waldman making public statements about Amber Heard, and they want to establish that it wasn't just the attorney, it was Johnny, and he was the ringleader here. And that's important, is it not? That you can turn a bit of a sinisterness into the Jack Sparrow character that he's been able to articulate so far for this jury.
You're right, and that's sort of been the goal here from Amber Heard, is to try to to turn this into make him look like a more sinister, evil, bad person. Try to get rid of the sort of lovable public persona that he's had for decades in this country. Johnny Depp has been a very loved actor and sort of American, celebrity icon for so long. So it is really difficult for Ms. Heard's team to try to undermine that, and I don't think they've done so far. Maybe perhaps through no fault of their own, but I don't think they've achieved that yet. And again, this trial has really just been sort of a mudslinging PR battle. I'm not sure, I've watched a lot of this trial. I've probably seen maybe 6% of the entire trial really delve into the actual issue of defamation, right? There's been very little discussion of the actual defamation aspect of this case, which is what it is. It's really just been Amber Heard was abusive, no, Johnny Depp was abusive, no, they were both abusive. So, I expect that to continue, and perhaps that was the goal from both sides here anyways, not really to actually win a defamation case, because they've started sort of ignoring that aspect of it.
Got to cut you off. We need a break at the top of the hour. Julie Grant is filling in for Vinny, meaning Julia Janae's here, filling in for Julie.
Ted, that's right. All eyes on that witness stand to hear what the Heard argument is going to be and what they're going to be asking Johnny Depp. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss a minute.
Dr. Moore, based on your analysis, did Mr. Depp's finger injury happen as a result of a vodka bottle being thrown at him?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
I'm sorry.
No.
Monday morning to you. This is Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae, in for Julie Grant this hour. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's day 20 in the dueling defamation trial between ex-spouses Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and we are anxiously waiting to see if what our sources tell us is true, that Amber Heard is going to recall her ex Johnny Depp to the stand today. Now, throughout the last 6 weeks of testimony, each side has called witnesses to corroborate their version of events. And this morning, the Heard team called an orthopedic surgeon to the stand who testified that, in his opinion, Depp did not injure his finger, that sliced fingertip incident, from a thrown vodka bottle, as Depp has previously testified. We don't want you to miss a moment of testimony, so we are going to let you get back into the courtroom where that second witness is still on the stand, Dr. David Spiegel. He's a psychiatrist. And it looks like they are in a sidebar. So I do want to bring in our guest who is still with us this morning. Joining me now to discuss, civil rights attorney and former prosecutor Eric Fidali in New York. Eric, what do you think they are going to start their direct examination of Depp on the stand? They have this psychiatrist who says his memory likely is impaired because of substance abuse.
I think they're just going to try to learn from their mistakes of the cross-examination when he kind of came across pretty well. They didn't really paint him as the monster they thought they were going to. I think they're going to try to learn from their mistakes, perhaps get under his skin, and sort of try to flip the script here as to how he's presented himself.
All right, looks like they are back. Let's go in live.
Thank you. May be seated. All right, your next question. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Spiegel, before we took the break, you were talking about the correlation between domestic abuse, heavy alcohol abuse, and cognitive disorders. Does the literature support your testimony on this?
Yes, the literature fully supports everything I just said through that interaction.
Thank you. Now, you indicated that you reviewed Mr. Depp's video depositions. Is that correct? The
Yes.
ones from November 10 through 12 of 2020 and December 14 of 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you reach any conclusions about his cognitive symptoms, insight, and judgment in watching those?
So during the video deposition, what was readily apparent was a gentleman who had a significant delay in processing speed. And like I said, when you have a delay in processing speed, many other cognitive functions are going to follow. You're going to be impaired attention, concentration, memory. All that's going to happen. In terms of having to, the speech process, if you heard the deposition, the way the thoughts were conveyed were much more in the way of kind of disconnected, disjointed statements. It wasn't that they were not necessarily understandable, but they didn't have any coherent pattern until he was more structured by Ms. Bredehoff to kind of get to the point of the question, which happened throughout most of the deposition. And so you could see there that there was obviously some form of cognitive issue that should not be happening in someone in their mid-50s, and it, probably due to the alcohol and substances.
What, if any, observations did you make about impulse control?
So during the deposition? Or,
Yes, or,
okay.
and,
or any
and
other
on the
time?
record evidence either.
So again, I think that under the guise of not being acutely intoxicated, I think Mr. Depp was able to control much of his behavior, much of his thinking, even if it was aberrant or negative, he was able to control that. I think that once you start getting to the point of adding substances to that, that will set it over. If you saw the video, I think you all did, about the in the kitchen where there was smashing of glasses, slamming of cupboards, and yelling at Ms. Heard that you don't exist. And throughout the deposition of Dr. Kipper, Mr. Depp is firing him and rehiring him and yelling and screaming. And I do believe that a lot of it had to do with the interaction of, hey, we're trying to help you get sober, okay? And it is obviously something you are resisting, not ready for, not wanting. And so you saw a lot of yelling, a lot of acting out, if you would, which puts you on the state of, hey, this is a gentleman who has really significant trouble with delaying gratification, okay, delaying reward. And certainly one way to make that significantly worse is with substances. There's no question about that.
And you may have subsumed this in, but what, if anything, did you observe relating to erratic behavior based on the record evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, when you talk about erratic behavior, Dr. Kipper's deposition, I believe it was, where, and I think I made particular note of this only because I'm a psychiatrist myself. There was a very large ranting about Dr. Cowan, who was Ms. Heard's psychologist therapist. And the language, you can be dissatisfied with your provider. I have no problem with that. You could be dissatisfied and you have a right to go to wherever you want to go to. But the texting that were involved in this in terms of erratic behavior was disturbing in terms of the verbiage used, the phrases used. Am I free to use some of the language, or should I reserve that, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
I can?
Believe me, the jury's been hearing it.
Okay, all right, I want to make sure. Jury, I want to make sure. Okay, so it's something along the line that
he can talk about what he developed from the hearsay, but not repeat it himself.
He's entitled to give examples of it.
I'll
from
sustain
hearsay.
the objection.
Without giving the exact words that you recall.
Oh, without giving the
Go ahead,
exact
just-
words?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, without giving the exact words, it was basically vulgar language directed towards Dr. Cowan throughout multiple texts, multiple things that Dr. Cowan were doing in therapy. It was, like I say, it was without relaying it, the exact thing. I'm trying to be as accurate as I can. And I think at the end of it, I think he was also talking about that Dr. Cowan was filling Amber with positive thoughts or therapeutic.
Objection, hearsay.
I think he's keeping it more general. He's entitled to rely on. Thank you.
So more along the line of giving Amber psychiatric jargon to put on him. And actually, what I read and interpreted what Dr. Cowan's was getting blasted for was he was kind of teaching Amber how to use conflict resolution in a more appropriate manner and learning to express things more rationally rather than express things as irrational as they have been expressed. And for that, there were a lot of negativity being sworn at. So again, erratic behavior in terms of writing a text, but I have no problem with people being angry. Okay, none whatsoever. It's just the expressing of it and the continual ranting of it was very uncomfortable for me to read. But regardless, I think we have seen in terms of erratic behavior, much of the psychological and the physical maltreatment we talked about.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
I don't agree.
Sustain next question.
Okay. Mr. Depp is 58 years old. Are the behaviors that you have been describing for the jury, are those typical and age-related?
No, so while I don't consider 58 years old, I'm 59, okay? I will tell you that the age-related changes that occur in humans are very erratic, hit and miss, meaning they'll occasionally be there. You may need a little bit more time to answer a question or pull things out of memory. You're just a little bit slow and a lot more inconsistently slow. You wouldn't describe what Dr. Blaustein's changes were or what I saw in the deposition attributed to age.
Dr. Spiegel, what is Seroquel?
Seroquel or quetiapine is actually an atypical antipsychotic, which is indicated for many things, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, adjunctive treatment for major depression. So it's indicated for a lot of things.
But what
We've got to squeeze in a quick break, but we are going to get you back into that Fairfax County, Virginia courtroom as week 6 of Depp v. Heard continues. This is Court TV Live.
Download the free app now.
Back, Dr. David Spiegel, a psychiatrist, is currently on the witness stand testifying about how drugs and alcohol impact cognition and memory. Let's get you back in where we left off.
This is one of the drugs that Mr. Depp was taking,
yes.
Correct? It was a prescribed drug?
Yes.
Okay.
So
please explain.
So the effect of Seroquel is it's very often used as a sleeping agent. Because it doesn't have a lot of the side effects that are associated with conventional antipsychotics, movement disorders, tardive dyskinesia, et cetera, or at least it's a very low risk of that. So people have used it off-label, physicians have used it off-label to help them sleep. The problem is the effect is very barbiturate-like, and it really knocks people out, or certainly if you use it at high enough doses, it can, okay? And the problem is it also has street value. So it's absolutely used on the street for that downer-like effect. And obviously it's a little bit more readily available because it's prescribed. So it does have that street value portion of it.
And Dr. Spiegel, what effect would this have on Mr. Depp based on the dosages he was taking?
So I think what you're looking at is
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
Please continue.
What you will see in patients who have substance use disorders are people who unfortunately kind of wake up and fall asleep only through pharmacological assistance, meaning that their own circadian rhythms are no longer in control of that behavior. So you will take stimulants to quote unquote get you up in the morning, and then you will take things like quetiapine, Seroquel to knock you out. So basically what these are being used for is, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna get knocked out. And that's very characteristic of what would be actually legal prescribed substances. That's not illegal at all. That's very legal. And that's the seemingly what these medicines effect are on patients who have substance use disorder.
Dr. Spiegel, what is Neurotin?
So Neurotin gabapentin is actually an anti-seizure medicine, which I think it's indicated for seizures, and it might be indicated for one chronic pain condition, although I can't swear that to you. That said, again, in a substance use disorder population, it has significant street value, and people who misuse opiates often supplement that with Neurotin because it has this anti-pain calming effect. So unfortunately, it also can cause respiratory suppression. And so when you use it with opiates, there are people that are unlucky enough to succumb to respiratory suppression as a result, but it has a very additive, calming effect that people use it for.
And what effect would this have on Mr. Depp in the dosage he was taking?
Again, I was waiting for an objection. Okay, again, what it would do is have the street value of using it with the opiates. The advantage is you're using it with opiates, and it's because opiates in general, despite everything else it does, are calming. And you use it with it, it offers further calming, which is why doctors have been warned not to prescribe medications like gabapentin and opiates together unless under significant, strict following, because it can cause serious problems, such as death, respiratory suppression.
And Mr. Depp was also taking Adderall, correct?
Yes.
Can you please describe to the jury what that impact would have, and particularly in connection with the dosages?
So Adderall is a psychostimulant, which is prescribed relatively regularly for ADHD. The problem comes again when you shouldn't be prescribing or receiving Adderall when you're already misusing cocaine. Okay, you're now doubling your stimulant dosage here. And basically what you are talking about, again, it comes down to in the substance use disorder population, you are using it to stay awake, have energy, keep yourself going, getting high, getting energetic. And then the only way to kind of combat that, because you have this effect, is to kind of take downers during the day, and downers being anything that's calming. So anywhere from opiates prescription, anywhere from Neurotin, anywhere from Seroquel, all medications that are which are abusable. And so that's what this is going on. That's what the substance use disorder patient has. And it can't be given with someone using cocaine, because that's an extreme risk for death. You can't be given together.
And what, if any, effect would these drugs have if they were mixed with MDMA or cocaine?
So when you combine the two together, like I talked about before, there are effects where you are looking at, right, the predisposing traits of intimate partner violence. So jealousy, rapid mood changes, poor self-control, and to some degree, condoning violence to a certain degree. When you combine them all together, you get this disinhibiting euphoriant effect from cocaine and Adderall. Then when you combine the two together, what happens, you get too much, and then you start getting irritable, you start getting agitated, okay? You start becoming suspicious, jealous, potentially disinhibited, psychotic, and these are the risks. And again, we're talking about not your average everyday use of these substances. We are talking about chronic use together. And we also know that alcohol and cocaine use independently increase significantly the risk of intimate partner violence. These aren't statistics I'm coming up with. They all depend, anywhere from reports up to 7 to 27-fold. So you are, quote unquote, colloquially playing with fire when you are talking about substances and intimate partner violence. You are playing with fire. And that's all of us.
And the substances that Mr. Depp was taking and the record evidence relating to those, did you draw any conclusions concerning whether he met this criteria or these risk factors?
So in terms of substance use disorder, when you look at it, so major role obligations not being fulfilled, don't have any evidence about operating under the influence or not. Social issues, especially disagreements and arguments with your spouse or family. Obviously, there was tolerance and dependence for the amount he was using, because if anyone is naive to these medications, most of us would be dead. Unsuccessful efforts, difficulty cutting back, using more than intended, giving up social, occupational obligations because this, I know there was right after the rehab on the island in Australia, when Mr. Depp went out partying with Marilyn Manson and using...
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Actually, that's asking for the record evidence for
I'll
this.
sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay.
What other record evidence did you have supporting this?
Psychological, using despite the fact you know it causes known psychological, psychiatric, or medical effects. And I think that's been pretty well documented. So in this case, you're talking about someone who has a severe substance use disorder. I do want to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that intimate partner violence and substance use disorders are two scourges in this country. They're two plagues. This is very serious stuff we're playing with. And when you are just getting someone closer and closer to the threshold...
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
This is highly relevant, Your Honor.
I'll overrule as to relevance.
Beyond the scope.
Go ahead.
Beyond the scope of the question.
Yes.
All right, I'll sustain that objection.
All right. Tell me more about the relationships between substance abuse and IPV, please.
Yeah, so again, that you are talking about this, and you may be able to control the risk factors for any of us may be able to control the risk factors for IPV. Any of us might be able to, okay? When we're thinking and we're not disinhibited, not having these hyper intense emotions from substances. Once you add that to this mix, your brain can no longer do what it's supposed to do. And it's supposed to prevent you from doing this, quite frankly, because it's wrong.
Did you arrive at any conclusions concerning substance abuse and potential self-harm that may have led to Mr. Depp injuring his finger?
So I think the physician before me explained that pretty well, but I'll tell you that Mr. Depp has a history of self-injurious behavior, meaning cutting himself. Mr. Depp has a history of burning himself. I know when the actual event happened, there was texting to Dr. Kipper, paraphrasing, not saying exactly, that Amber and him got into a disagreement related to her wanting him to be sober. And then as a result of that, he said he got so angry, he cut the tip of his finger off. Okay. So if you're asking me, can someone who has, or have I seen, and can someone who cuts themselves, burns themselves, can cut a tip of their finger off with or without alcohol or cocaine or the rest? The answer is...
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
That's exactly what he overruled. Thank you. Please continue.
Was it overruled?
It was overruled.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So that is not a very far jump. I've certainly seen patients do a lot worse than that who started out with similar risk factors of, burning self and cutting self. I'm not going to get into the descriptions, but it has seen people do a lot worse than that.
Okay.
So the answer is yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn now specifically to intimate partner violence, and I know you've talked certainly about it. But can you tell the jury, please, a little bit more about intimate partner violence and what is included in that?
So the APA Task Force on Violence in the Family defined more or less this topic of domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, as recurrent abusive behavior by means of psychological, sexual, or physical maltreatment for the purpose of achieving control or maintaining power, authority, and control.
Can it include threats and intimidation?
It includes, so in the part of psychological abuse, which is done essentially as a means of emotionally and mentally hurting someone, but with the same end goal to achieve control, it can be destroying property, it could be financial, which is part of that, verbal outbursts, threats, intimidation, body language, all of that goes under the concept of psychological abuse. And you may be able to divide it, verbal, nonverbal, what's exactly emotional versus verbal, but they're all under that rubric, and they're all under the guise of maintaining control.
Do survivors of intimate partner violence experience mental health issues?
Can you repeat the question?
Do survivors of intimate partner violence experience mental health issues?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So survivors of intimate partner violence, and by the way, I should start out by saying, we don't expect, in psychiatry, we don't expect our victims to be perfect. We don't expect our victims to be unscathed by what they've received. So starting with that, okay, it is not unusual as survivors to see substance use, substance abuse, substance-induced symptoms, chronic depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, or subsyndromal post-traumatic stress disorder along the lines of battered wife syndrome, and some emotional unpredictability. And again, you are a victim here. You are a victim.
Do perpetrators typically seek treatment or counseling?
No, perpetrators are not receiving counseling treatment. One, because they're going to be probably having to tell someone that they actually struck someone, which is what their thought is about the big problem about intimate partner violence, is just the hitting. Again, important, but not the sole part of it. So perpetrators very rarely will go into any type of formal counseling. Victims go into counseling. Victims are seeking actually couples counseling. Victims are seeking couples advice to try to repair what's happening, okay? But in terms of actual perpetrators, no, they don't do that.
We've got to take a break, but we are going to get you right back into that courtroom where that testimony in the dueling defamation trials between Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard is continuing. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Dr. David Spiegel, a psychiatrist for Amber Heard's team, is currently on the witness stand in Fairfax County, Virginia, testifying in the Johnny Depp defamation trial. Let's get you back in the courtroom. We hit the pause button. We'll pick up where we left off.
The record evidence of physical violence by Mr. Depp.
So,
Objection, Your Honor. No foundation.
Do you want to approach on it?
It looks like we've got a sidebar there, so let's bring in our guest, civil rights attorney and former prosecutor Eric Fidali in New York. Eric, is this an effective way, bringing on this expert before Johnny Depp is expected to be on the stand? Do you think this is an effective way to tee him up?
Not yet, and we'll see where Amber Heard's team goes with this. But so far, he's from what I can tell, he's really just discussing things that Johnny Depp has himself admitted. I don't think it's really an issue in this case or a contention of fact in this case, whether or not Johnny Depp has had substance abuse issues. So sort of the focus on that substance abuse issue and then sort of loosely tying it to intimate partner violence, I don't think has been very effective yet. We'll see where it goes and perhaps where this sort of takes a turn and really maybe gets to an ultimate point. But so far, he just seems like this expert is sort of repeating things that we sort of already know. So I'm not really sure what the significance of this expert is just yet.
Eric, as we're taking a look at this gallery, I want to point out something that our Court TV team that's inside of that courtroom has let us know during a previous break, that there was a woman after the jury was excused for that break who stood up in the gallery and yelled out sort of towards Johnny Depp that stop denying that this baby is yours. Very strange, but we don't believe that woman is still inside of the courtroom, but just goes to show it's something that they always have to be on guard for inside of such a high-profile case. I want to listen in. We might be done with that sidebar. Oh, no, looks like it's still going on. So, Eric, let me ask you this. I know you represent survivors of sexual abuse, and you mentioned there that the psychiatrist on the stand is talking about the mental health issues that can result from that abuse. Is that an important issue that they need to keep hammering home with this jury, really talking about Amber Heard and where she stands in this?
Absolutely, and it's 100% true. The mental toll and the emotional damages that result from domestic violence, sexual abuse, cannot be overstated. It has a devastating effect on the mental well-being of a victim. So perhaps that is a way that they're going to use this expert to sort of discuss what Amber Heard has been going through, and perhaps maybe even explain some of the issues she had in her testimony. I think that might be a clever way to use this expert. But again, this expert doesn't really go to any of the core issues here at this trial. I think probably the public really has lost sight of the fact that this is a defamation trial. This really isn't, and we've just gotten so far beyond that with sort of just mudslinging between Depp and Amber Heard and who was the worst person in this relationship, that it's really kind of, I haven't seen much talk about the defamation. Certainly this expert doesn't go to the defamation aspect of it. So it's certainly been an interesting trial. The woman who you stated, kind of spoke out during the break. Doesn't surprise me sort of how this trial has been sort of a media circus. I haven't seen a trial like this, or it has just been so part of the public eye, and everyone has sort of had their opinion. So it's certainly been interesting to watch, see this all play out.
Absolutely. Those spectators, something that I haven't seen as well to this degree. It looks like they're still in that sidebar. So let's get in another break, and when we return, we'll get you back into the courtroom after a few minutes. Stay with us. This is Court TV Live. Welcome back to Court TV Live. We are continuing to follow the dueling defamation case in Fairfax, Virginia. An update to a commotion that we have been talking about inside of the gallery in that courtroom. There was a woman who was escorted out. We can confirm that deputies there have actually removed her wristband. She is barred from coming in. She claimed that she has a child with Depp and had a child with her in the courtroom, and said, quote, this was after the jury had been taken out for a break, that I love you, Johnny, and our souls are connected. Really unexpected. Never know what to expect in this trial. We've been watching to see if a sidebar is finishing up, and looks like it has. Dr. Spiegel, a psychiatrist, still on the stand. Let's get you back into the courtroom where we left off.
So what have you reviewed that correlates with the risk factors for IPV that related to Mr. Depp?
So risk factor I reviewed that correlate, so starting with I guess we'll start with the physical, because that was the question that was put out there. What I have reviewed has demonstrated pushing, shoving, grabbing.
Objection, Your Honor.
Let me see if I can direct this a little differently, Dr. Spiegel. Rather than giving the summary of what that was, what did you review that correlates? In other words, did you review witness statements? Did you review depositions, photos?
Yes. So what I reviewed was in terms of witness statements, Dr. Kipper's notes. Very, very interestingly, actually, early on in I think it was 2012, or around that time, circa 2012, 2014, Ms. Heard was...
Action beyond the scope of the question.
What he reviewed is the question.
All right, let's see.
So I reviewed so Ms. Heard's...
Objection, there's no question pending.
If he's answering, go ahead and answer what you reviewed. Please continue with what you reviewed.
Therapist's notes, counselor's notes, text messages, depositions, video, pictures, psychologists' notes and evaluations, and I said physicians' notes. That's what I reviewed.
All right. Now, you've indicated that intimate partner violence includes physical violence, sexual abuse, and psychological aggression. Can you please describe for the jury what psychological aggression is and what it entails?
So, I said psychological aggression would be the engaging in behavior for the sole purpose of emotionally and or mentally harming someone, with the main purpose of, again, to maintain control. So behaviors that can occur with psychological aggression include insults, intimidation, holding things financially against someone, jealousy rants, property destruction. So all that is involved, a nonverbal communication, so threatening looks, glances, things like that. All that is involved in psychological maltreatment and intimate partner violence.
What if anything would be psychological aggression if it was trying to control somebody's career? Would that be a factor?
Yeah.
Section leading.
Overruled.
So yeah, I'm trying to control someone's career. That would be under financial, trying to mistreat someone, especially someone wants to succeed and try and have a career, and you're preventing them from doing so by maltreatment. That's another example.
Okay. So I'm going to ask specifically about the risk factors for intimate partner violence. Is substance abuse a risk factor for intimate partner violence?
Yes, it is a risk factor as well as a precipitating cause.
Okay. And what record evidence did you review that correlates to Mr. Depp engaging in substance abuse?
So the record evidence of, I'll just start with Dr. Kipper and the substances that Mr. Depp was using and misusing, both in terms of prescribed and on urine drug screen, were brought out through that.
Okay. Is lack of behavioral control and impulsiveness risk factors for intimate partner violence?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And what, if any, record evidence were you aware of that Mr. Depp had exhibited lack of behavioral control and impulsiveness?
Again, threatening.
Objection. Record evidence.
That correlates with, and I'm on the risk factors at this
overruled.
point. Thank you, Your Honor.
Threatening. Destroying furniture, property, breaking things, writings on walls, mirrors, writing in blood on furniture. All that would go with that.
Okay. All right. And what, if any, risk factor is narcissism for intimate partner violence?
So A patient, before we get into narcissistic personality traits or disorder, the overall, it's categorized under what's called cluster B personality
Objection,
disorder.
Your Honor, beyond the scope of the question.
He's explaining the narcissism.
Well, I'll sustain objection if you want to ask a question.
Can you explain to the jury what's involved with narcissism as it relates to the risk factors of intimate partner violence and
So
what that realm is?
So narcissism patients have, again, poor self-control, okay, rapid mood shifts, okay. As a result, they have an undue sense of admiration. They worship power, they worship control. They have lack of empathy, and people are generally kept around as long as they're useful to them. A large sense of entitlement. Anything else? Need for praise. So that would go under narcissistic personality and IPV.
What if any what if any traits would be requiring admiration? Would that fit into it?
Yeah, oh yes, requiring admiration, need to be admired is part and parcel of narcissistic personality disorder. Yes.
Would being envious fit within that?
Yes.
Fragile self-esteem?
Yes.
And what, if any, record evidence do you have that correlates with Mr. Depp being narcissistic?
Well, I do think that the fact that he thought that Amber owed him, Ms. Heard owed him.
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. Thank you. Go ahead.
The fact that Ms. Heard owed him and only wanted to be together with him because of his fame is an example of that. I do think the jealousy aspects are an example of that. I do think, as I think Mr. Tillett had testified that, being admired is one thing, but then behind your back saying something else about people is another thing. And I can probably say with a reasonable certainty that to some degree this whole trial is that.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
That's not record evidence. Speculation.
Overruled.
Please continue.
That this whole trial, in terms of narcissistic insult, is what's going on. I believe that Mr. Depp was very much a mainstay appropriately in Hollywood, and then this was pulled the rug without.
Objection, Your Honor. Can we
I think
be?
he's able to explain what
I'll
he's.
sustain that objection.
Can you explain what you mean by this whole trial?
Your
This
Honor, can we
proceeding,
approach?
this court case we're going through, right?
There's an objection, sir.
What other conduct is in the record evidence that correlates with Mr. Depp being narcissistic, having those traits?
Was the thing about the trial rule? I can't speak.
You're not allowed to say that.
Not say that. Okay. The only other thing about narcissism that I think in terms of the trial would be in order to maintain any sense of control, a narcissistic person really has to have lack of empathy, because in order to engage in behaviors that quote unquote are used to keep individuals in control, you don't really think about the other person. You're not really caring what happens to that other person. So I think that's another facet.
So are attitudes accepting or justifying intimate partner violence a risk factor for intimate partner violence?
Yes.
Do some perpetrators in intimate partner violence try to minimize the IPV?
Yes. So It is unfortunately not uncommon, especially during the calm phases of the abuse cycle where there is no increased tension, there is no acting out. Okay, you are talking about more of the honeymoon, apologetic phase, begging for forgiveness, telling them how you're going to change, maybe giving them gifts. And then when the dust settles later in the day.
We have reached the top of the hour, so we need to step aside, get in a break, but we'll get you right back inside the courtroom for more testimony from that psychiatrist. And we expect that Johnny Depp is going to take the stand once this witness has finished their cross-examination. You'll be seeing all of that here on Court TV Live.